Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tax Talk, broadcast by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. My name is Jordan Bateman, and I'm the British Columbia Director of the CTF, joined, as always, by the fantastic Alberta Director, Paige McPherson. How are you, Paige?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Jordan. How are you?
Good, Paige. I noticed you were having a little Twitter slap fight yesterday with the climate head office dude from the government of Alberta. So you're doing the Lord's work there, trying to protect Albertans from crazy tax schemes.
Yeah, the government just can't seem to get into their heads that Albertans oppose the carbon tax, even though there have been multiple polls to show it. But, you know, we keep trying to send the message.
No one's perfect. Paige and I are joined today by our Generation Screw Director, Aaron Gunn, who's been busy helping launch another season of campus clubs across Canada. And one of those campus club folks, Renaud Brossard, and they've taken the debt clock around. They've been chased off campus. You know, it's been a big kickoff for Generation Screwed. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing good, Jordan. Excited to be on more campuses than ever before, and excited to keep the Generation Screwed movement growing.
How many campuses now?
27 campuses.
27. That's
nice.
Huge.
Really. Hey, Aaron and Renaud, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about the kickoff conference you had with your coordinators, and then and a little bit about the debt clock tour.
Well, sure, Jordan. I'll talk about quickly the annual retreat that we had, and then I'll pass it off to Renaud to talk about us getting kicked off the University of Laval. So just at the end of August, every year we hold an annual retreat, and this year was no different. So we held our Generation Screwed annual retreat, coordinators coming in from across the country. We did it in Quebec City this year. We extended it. It was a 4-day retreat. We added a day for strategic planning amongst our regional coordinators. And went really well. We learned a bunch of new skills. We had our CTF Ontario director there. We had the Atlantic director for the CTF, Kevin Lacey, the research director, all teaching.
Kids love Kevin Lacey. I gotta say, Kevin Lacey is like a legend.
They do. Mm-hmm. They do. The reviews definitely pan that out. But everything went really well. Had a lot of fun. A lot of great team building. And we went from that right into our Debt Clock campus tour, where we visited 13 campuses in 10 days across Ontario and Quebec, touring the CTF's debt clock across that region. But our first stop was a little bit problematic. We ran into a couple of issues. I'll pass it over to Renaud. The entire confrontation went down en français, so I missed the nuances of the tactics. But Renaud picked up on it, and it was a great story. We got a lot of media off of it, and ironically ended up probably raising more awareness. But I'll pass it off to Renaud to the storyline, what exactly happened.
Well, thanks, Aaron. But don't worry, there was not much nuance in what they were saying. So as soon as we got to University of Laval, we parked at that clock. We took 2 parking spots, but we made sure to pay for them, just to be sure there would be no problem at all. But within 5 minutes of us getting there, campus security arrived and said we had no right to be there. And I tried to yell something about it. We've been on the road. It's been a long time, and there might be some media showing up in 15 minutes. Is it okay if we stay for like half an hour? As soon as I said that, the security guards reached for his walk and said we have a code 21, whatever that was. So apparently I look threatening with my lack of muscles and the shirt.
Wow, a code 21. That sounds extreme. So then what happened? Did you guys push back a little more, or were you extremely threatened by this code 21 and then got the hell out of there?
Did you find a safe space, or?
I don't know. Those were very hard to find. But I spoke with the campus secretary and said, look, it's not that we're not, it's not that we're refusing to leave. It's just I'm trying to find a common ground. Is there anyone I can talk to at the university? So I tried calling the university. They gave me a number I should call, and that person should be able to do something. That's what they told me. The sad thing is, those are public sector workers, and they're all on break for the same amount of time exactly at the same time. So the number I tried to call, the person was on break and would not be back before 1:30, and that was at 12:45. And there was no way campus security would allow us to stay this long. So we ended up staying for 10-15 minutes, and then we left before security forcefully kicked us off instead. And we went in a hotel parking lot right in front of school. And on private property, we didn't have any problem with saying what we wanted to say. but on school grounds, it was impossible. The weird thing about this is that University of Laval has this, amongst its values, they try to promote student engagement. When students try to do something, they're getting shut down. That's not sending the right message.
Right. So there was a phrase that I remember you guys having told me about when this event happened, that they said that you were committing or taking part in unsanctioned activism, which to me sounds like an oxymoron. But I mean, what is that? They said that to you? Like what went down there?
Yeah, they said, well, what you're doing is unsanctioned activism. You need to have the adequate permit to be here and to have this death truck on campus in a parking spot in front of the building.
But it's activism.
Yeah, I said, I mean, if it's a matter of permit, well, there's parking meters right here. We paid for we paid for both parking spots. Mm-hmm. So apparently that was not sufficient enough for them. We should have asked in advance and told them what our message was, and then go through a lot of process and then sign some forms in order to exert our right to free speech.
So, sorry, Jordan. I'm just thinking now. So this is a deck clock tour. You're on the deck clock tour. Yes, I guess it could have been something that you would have scheduled ahead of time. But to me, the term unsanctioned activism is so absurd because that, why do you need to, to me, it just seems like an oxymoron, like I said. But let's say that there was some kind of a social event that happened and spurred protests, right after it happened, like same day kind of a thing, and people hadn't applied for a permit. Is that unsanctioned activism? Does that mean that the University of Laval, you need some kind of a massive buffer period to plan your activism? You can't react immediately to something that's happening? I mean, that seems ridiculous.
I would say that's what the university is trying to do, and that's what they're trying to say, but that's not what we saw when there were huge student strikes in 2012 in Quebec. When the students went out and decided to protest on the university campus, I don't think there's one campus security guard that went and told hundreds of people that they should not be on university grounds. And that's basically it's the same thing that should apply. The other funny thing is when afterwards, University of Laval, when they answered to media on why they had kicked us out, they said, well, Red Bull needs a permission, so Generation 2, the student group doing political activism, should have a permission. Those are two completely different things. Yeah.
They compared it to Red Bull? Is that what you said?
Compared it to Red Bull. I mean, we do have a bit of, we are energetic, but not that much.
Now, but this launched a real media storm, and then it probably ended up helping you in future stops. Is that fair to say?
It certainly did. Actually, on the next day when we were at McGill University, campus security, after seeing the story in Toronto Sun, helped us move to the most prominent spot on campus. So we had quite the opposite experience at McGill, where we wanted to make sure what we had to say was going to be heard, while Laval just tried to make sure no one would hear it. So while we would have preferred to talk directly to the students at Laval and have a conversation with them, at least there was some positive out of this.
Yeah, that's great. So going away from this, and given your point about the student protests, that weren't shut down, do you feel as though this is just kind of a standard policy that applies across the board, or do you feel like certain causes are applied indiscriminately and then, other causes are allowed to do their thing without being disrupted?
I must admit I have no idea. The one comparison that comes to mind is the huge student strikes in 2012. And, I would understand if any security guard said, no, I'm not going to be the one guy to tell hundreds of people to leave campus. So I'm not sure to what extent the university applied it in this case. But the university tried to apply it, but there's difference in how it was applied, yes. Because those students were not, they were not told to be, that they had no right to speak, and that's perfectly fair. They have every single right to speak and express themselves. But on the other hand, when we were there with the black bloc, it seemed a little bit easier for them to get us to leave campus.
Well, big or small, causes on university campuses, ideas, discussions, they should all be permitted. Obviously, that's the whole point of a university campus, or at least a big part of the point. It's why taxpayers spend a very large sum of money every year subsidizing university campuses so that we can, get that return on our investment for education. And if we're not expanding people's minds, then maybe we're not getting that return on investment. But I'm really glad that it ended up working out and creating this media storm. Aaron, maybe do you want to shed light on the subsequent media that you guys received from this? Like, what was the attention that it garnered?
So yeah, so the Quebec City event specifically, first of all, raised a lot of more awareness about the rest of our tour and the remaining 12 stops after that. In Quebec, I know Renaud did a bunch of media, first with the Rebel, then some radio stations in Quebec City, the newspapers in Quebec City, and then we got kind of national coverage as well, both directly in the Toronto Sun and across the Sun chain of papers. And then after, kind of indirectly or referenced in 2 National Post pieces, one of which you wrote, obviously. So that's pretty much the extent of, and then of course throughout the tour we were doing TV and radio interviews, and a lot of it came up like, oh, you got treated really well here, what happened again at Laval, and we recounted the story. So but media basically kind of reverberated through all of our stops and everything. But it was nice to see that although we ran into a couple problems at a couple of universities, it was nothing like the Laval kind of fascist, unsolicited activism kind of reasoning or rationale. And we didn't run into any roadblocks to that degree.
Hey, Renaud, before we let you go, tell people why they should support Generation Screwed. And I know that we, through the Taxpayers Federation, help fund the organization, and people can donate to Generation Screwed. Make your pitch to folks about why they should support the cause.
Well, certainly, it's just a matter of what we want to leave for our children. Do we want to leave a prosperous country, or do we want to leave them with a mountain of debt? I think for an overwhelming majority of people, the answer is, well, the latter, the former, sorry. We'll leave them with this prosperous country. It's what Generation Screwed is all about. Making sure that we currently live within our means, in order to make sure our children can live within our means instead of paying for what we got this year for the next 150 years.
Awesome. Well, it's great that all the subsequent media coverage that you guys got, I mean, you were allowed to get in those all those really important messages about intergenerational debt. And yeah, well, that's fabulous. I mean, it sucks that it happened. It sucks that this is happening on university campuses really across North America, where we see certain views being shut down. But it's great that we have a media climate in the country that takes notice and is willing to give coverage, not only to how crazy that was at Laval, but also how crazy it is that we're leaving future generations with so much government debt. Well, Renaud, I know you're on a break, so if you have to head out, we appreciate you joining us.
Have a good day, man.
Thank you for having me, and yes, have a good day.
All right, well, should we talk about what's new?
Yeah, let's talk about what's new. And I know I know that Aaron Gunn is probably on the edge of his seat ready to talk about U.S. politics, given that we had a very important debate this week. But yeah, let's talk about what's new. What's new with you, Jordan?
What's new with me? Well, I'm having some problems with the mayor of Vancouver, Paige. Last week, I think I talked about the natural gas ban. This week, he's come in and slapped a tax and regulation scheme on Airbnb. Last year, he banned Uber. I'm just scratching my head how a supposedly progressive, tech-friendly, greenest city in the world could do all of these things to actually damage the way what the world is evolving into. So I wrote a piece for the Globe and Mail Online on Robertson's new tax. Essentially, Vancouver is going to ban any kind of Airbnb or short-term rentals of any property that the primary resident doesn't live in. So if you own let's say you own an apartment somewhere, you can't rent that out anymore through Airbnb unless you live in it. And then if you do live in it, it's your primary residence, you have to go down to City Hall. You have to meet a bunch of the regulations. You're going to have to pay some tax on what you make. You're going to have to purchase a business license. All these numbers yet to be settled. Jump through a bunch of hoops so that you can list your property with Airbnb. Also that they can apparently open up more rental suites, more for long-term rentals. The problem with that theory is only 0.1% of all the homes in Vancouver were rented were rented enough on Airbnb that it would actually make sense financially for the folks to switch those over to long-term rentals. So kind of one of these crazy, it's just such an overreaction to the sharing economy. And it's just another weird thing from the city of Vancouver that flies in the face of what they should be trying to tout about our city.
The city of Vancouver is unlike any other Canadian city in that they just cannot wait to ban and regulate everything. Like they're obsessed with, they don't let anything happen organically, which is, you're right. I mean, so it's so ironic in a city that says that it's this, hub of tech and innovation and progressiveness. So this means basically that if you were to have, I guess, an investment property in Vancouver, you couldn't use it for Airbnb, or if your work perhaps led you to having to work in Victoria and Vancouver as an example, and you had two residences, but the one in Victoria spent more time, you couldn't then rent out the place in Vancouver.
Correct.
It's so ridiculous because of the cost of living in Vancouver.
Yeah, well, exactly. And this is the really scary thing, right? There are a lot of homeowners who rely on a little bit of Airbnb income, even from a night or two a month, just to kind of help them meet their bills. Vancouver, costliest city in Canada to live in, costliest city in Canada to own property in. I heard about a family last night. They had rented a house. They had a secondary suite in it that they had sublet out to someone else. They had a secondary suite in it, but they were using it for their grown-up kids, 20-year-old kids. Their rent went up. They couldn't afford the rent, so they basically moved the kids upstairs and started leasing that out on Airbnb a few nights a month. Helps them make ends meet. Owner didn't mind. It worked. That is now illegal under what Vancouver does. So here they're going to actually plunge this family who needs 3 or 4 bedrooms into the rental market that's so tight. So there's going to be all sorts of unintended consequences. But it's really another piece. It's another step down the slippery slope of eroding private property rights. And what business does the state have in telling people what they should do with their extra space, with their homes? And if this doesn't work, the next logical step is forcing people to rent out extra bedrooms in their house. Forcing people to rent out things like that. Like there's a line here that is really blurry, and Robertson's getting closer and closer to it. I think Vancouver should be concerned. And this is the same mayor, remember, who on his electoral deathbed before the last election, when the polls showed that he might lose, stood up in front of the people of Vancouver and apologized for not listening to them, promised a new era of public consultation, wouldn't rush things through, would get people's advice before making decisions. And, 2 years after that deathbed confession, when he pulled off a re-election, he's completely forgotten it. And I guess we're headed for another crybaby apology at the end of this 4-year term to save his bacon again.
What's his justification for doing this? Like, why? What's the reason?
Renters. He says the vacancy rate is something like it's under 0.5 percentage point in Vancouver. Of course, the mayor of Vancouver could actually get a lot more rental suites into the market by hurrying up approvals, reducing regulation on new builds in the city of Vancouver. There's 108 different fees, taxes, and levies that the city of Vancouver puts on new construction. It could take years to get a project through City Hall bureaucracy. You really want to do something for renters, get more supply into market. I mean, this is just like fundamental economics.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that it sucks for is people who want to visit Vancouver. As somebody who does not live there but does visit there, inexpensive options are appreciated because it's not only an expensive city to live in, it's an expensive city to visit. So, the mayor, probably somebody who should be thinking about tourism, it's a strange move for him.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So if you want to come to Vancouver and spend a few weeks here and travel to Whistler and Vancouver Island and day trips, but you want a home base, hotels aren't really set up to do that. But Airbnb is. And it's not like the hotel industry is suffering. And frankly, I don't have a lot of sympathy for them anyways. We just built them an $850 million convention center, taxpayer funded, on the waterfront to draw big conventions and book out hotel rooms. So they're doing fine. I just never feel any kind of need to save the buggy whip industry or the pager industry or industries that have to react to a technological change.
Pager industry.
The pager industry.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, is anything new with you?
My uncle worked in the pager industry, ironically enough, in Vancouver.
Oh, yep. Was he the pager king?
But, used to. No, it's gone now. I think he works for TELUS now. Well, I got a little story here that I just saw the other day, picked up on Bloomberg, picked up on it. I'm not sure if it was disseminated across other networks. That is that some type of group that the government's picked, this hodgepodge of private sector economists that are supposed to make estimates for the economy, say that the estimates that they used in the March budget when estimating the deficit and things like that are so far trailing by $50 billion, the output in the Canadian economy, or 1%. And so that's doing two things right now. That's going to put pressure, or it is putting pressure already on that $29 billion a year deficit figure that Bill Morneau set, and over $120 billion over 5 years perspective, because there's going to be less activity in the economy, less tax revenue. And then the second point of this, and this is what really grinds my gears if we had a grind my gear section, is I don't know, every time something like this happens, I don't know where the media goes. It's like, find me a KeynesianEconomist.com or something like that. Every time this happens, there's like, the next paragraph down, there's so-and-so economist from whatever bank who's probably going to benefit if the government takes on more debt is calling for even more stimulus now. So I'm not really sure who these people are. They're obviously not representative. There's not some grassroots uprising calling for more stimulus in the Canadian economy, as far as I know. But so there's this less than ideal performance by the Canadian economy is putting mathematical budgetary pressure on the budget as it is, and then B, it's getting all these reactionary Keynesians coming out calling for more stimulus, i.e. more debt on top of that. So that's what's new in my world, and it's grinding my gears.
When digging a hole, Aaron, the smartest thing to do is just keep digging down to get your way out, right? Homer Simpson taught us that. Keep digging, stupid.
Exactly.
Homer Simpson is the leading expert, really. He should be who journalists go to for comment.
Well, you need to register. You need to register like findasmarteconomist.com, and then feed those media requests. Feed those media requests on. Yeah, I noticed today too that they're revising. Now they're revising growth numbers, and actually the Canadian economy grew by 0.5 percentage point last month, which is pretty good because oil is slightly rebounding. Mm-hmm. But of course, no one will stand up. They won't interview any economists now who say, "Oh, great, we're rebounding. Let's stop taking on debt."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those comments seem to be harder to find. We need to shout to Aaron Woodrick, our federal director. Find out who these Keynesians are. Yes. And go and register on this website, wherever it is.
Disconnect their telephones. Paige, what's new in Alberta or anywhere else?
Well, so I do have some news from Alberta. I've got two pieces of news. One piece is not surprising at all, and the other piece is quite surprising in a way. So one piece is that there's a new poll that shows that Albertans oppose the carbon tax. This is the not surprising piece because there was a similar poll done in December of 2015 that showed exactly the same thing, around the 60% mark, oppose the carbon tax. That number has now grown. It's at 63% of people oppose the carbon tax when polled in Alberta. It really shouldn't be surprising. It's funny that I was, having a little Twitter spat with the director of communications for Alberta's climate change office, and he told me that I have to stop quoting these old poll numbers, and the day after a new poll numbers came out showing exactly the same thing, but it's actually gotten worse. And it's also funny given the fact that our Premier, Rachel Notley, just the other day in a media interview said that she believes that most Albertans are on board with their climate change plan. Most Albertans are on board, with the carbon tax. And this is a really common refrain from the government here in the province lately, saying, we believe that the data shows this, or we believe that Albertans want this. And there's really it's a belief, which sort of, I guess, is sort of in concert with the fact that I think a lot of what they're doing is ideological, but it's just not based in anything factual. Albertans don't want the carbon tax. So that's one piece of news. The other piece of news, though, which I think is a little bit juicier perhaps, and surprising in a way, is that it was revealed that the spokesperson for the Alberta Teachers Association, which is the teachers union here, has said that the government promised that they are going to get rid of standardized testing in Alberta schools. And so it's not surprising that the teachers union is pushing to get rid of standardized testing, but what is surprising is that the government has apparently said they're going to get rid of it. Now, he said that it was a past PC government who said this, but he expects the NDP to uphold this province. Obviously, the PCs never got rid of standardized testing in Alberta. That never happened. And when the education minister, the NDP education minister, was asked about this, his answer is very wishy-washy. They're reviewing the curriculum now, doesn't know what they're going to do on standardized testing. from a taxpayer perspective, it's really concerning. It's basically like any policy. It's like the government has rejected reviewing their carbon tax, after a year or 2 years to make sure that it actually is reducing emissions in the way that they want. It's the same thing. You're making a massive investment in education in Alberta, an incredibly important investment, and you're not going to measure to see if you're getting that money's worth on that investment to make sure that kids are getting a quality education. So I'm very disappointed to see that news this morning.
So like video of this promise, or is there?
I think it was in a newsletter. Oh, the promise from the minister? I don't know. The promise from the PC government, I don't know. Yeah. This is what the teachers union is saying.
Is this a Sandra Jensen promise?
I have no idea. It was somebody, I can't remember the official PC government who did promise this, but I guess you got to take the teachers union on their word for this. But either way, we have a different government now. So it doesn't really matter what the PCs, promise. The PCs in their platform propose bringing back Alberta health premiums, which is like just a healthcare tax, an additional one on your income taxes. And the NDP is not doing that because they're a different government and they don't do what the PCs were doing. Their whole thing was about getting rid of the PC legacy. But it's really more concerning now that the NDP minister has said that, well, we're not sure whether we're going to get rid of standardized testing or not. The other thing that you guys have in BC, where there's a lot of different educational options within the system. Within the public system, there's different schools catered towards, theater and sports, whatever different kinds of interests. We also give tax dollars, sort of the money follows the student. So if students go to independent schools instead of public schools, they can get kind of like a voucher for that. And if you're going to have all those different educational options within the system, which I think is good, it, caters to individual learning styles a little better than that one size fits all, everybody go to public schools approach, like in Ontario. You need to make sure that everybody's doing well, right? If you're going to have different kinds of schools, you need to make sure that they're all performing at the same level, the same standard of quality. So teachers unions, of course, don't want any money going towards independent schools. They don't like that diversity within the system. So it's not surprising that they want to get rid of the most important metric when it comes to that kind of diversity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, Paige, we've tortured them long enough. Now I got to give a standard. Disclaimer here. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We have no dog in the fight politically, and especially not in the United States. But obviously, the three of us have been texting like crazy throughout this crazy election campaign in the United States. It was debate night on Monday, and we're finally going to dip our toes in here and let's talk about this U.S. election.
Can we do like a who won? Like who do we each think won?
Yes. Gunn, who do you think won the debate?
Well, I'm not sure Clinton won the debate, but I feel like Trump lost the debate, would be my analysis.
He was.
I think Trump won the debate because the expectations were lower.
I don't know. He was so weak and low energy, right? Like it was not his usual feisty self. It's like a football game where one team dominates the first half and another team dominates the second half. I think he did well in the first half hour. I watched on replay. I thought he was solid the first half hour, and then I thought the last hour or so she really took it to him.
Absolutely.
Why is he getting so flustered over like the personal business stuff? Like it just.
He has a thin skin. He's like the worst when it comes to that. I mean, she was baiting him and he took every single bait that she laid out for him.
Aaron,
but I still think, I just want to say, I do think debates are about expectations. Yeah. For people who are political, who are watching and are looking for, we are kind of all communications professionals to a certain extent. You're looking for that kind of stuff. Yes, Trump seemed thin-skinned. Hillary dominated in the second part of the debate, no question about it. But I think you have to take into account two things. One, most people probably stopped watching the debate after about half an hour or maybe an hour. They probably didn't tune in for the whole thing. I don't know. That's not backed up in fact, but I would guess that. And two, the expectations for Trump going into the debate being somebody who hasn't been to these debates versus Hillary, who is a seasoned politician, seasoned debater. I think the expectations for him would be much lower. And so I wasn't surprised that there were some polls, public opinion polls that showed people thought that Trump won the debate based on those two things. So I think it's all about expectations.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the debate is this, like, if you're watching it as a political person with a political lens, like every political debate has ever been watched, yeah, I mean, Clinton won. But Trump's success so far has been kind of using the reality TV mindset, right, to introduce himself to the public. And I wonder if he's playing just, is one of them playing chess and one of them playing backgammon, right? Like completely different games. I'm not sure which one is more in tune with where everyone's at. What do you think, Gunn?
I think that subjective theories are great, but I think as more polls come in, you'll find out exactly who won the debate. I think Trump, who had made up a lot of ground and basically tied the race, is going to lose a good chunk of that ground he made up. The polls that have come out so far have indicated that, but most of the high quality polls they'll come out later today during Sunday talk shows. And then maybe Monday, Tuesday next week. And then you'll have a really good idea of what happened. My sense is he lost a bunch of key ground amongst kind of the swing. Again, all these elections are basically for 15% of the electorate. And these debates are a big chunk of the Trump supporters. A lot of them thought Trump won the debate. Obviously, if you're a hard Clinton supporter, you thought she won the debate. But a lot of these swing voters, kind of your middle class, especially the middle class kind of soccer moms and stuff like that, I don't think Trump swayed them at all. And I think most of the polls and focus group analysis. And the other thing is that all the talking heads on TV, most of them thought that he lost. And that almost has like a self-reinforcing reality where everyone says that he lost. And I think Trump's brand's also about winning. So I think that hurts as well, even though expectations were low. So I think a bunch of the polls that have come in haven't looked great for him since then. But the next couple of days, we'll see exactly what's happening. One bright side for him is this: the dominant narrative in the media that he lost this debate will lower expectations further going into the next debate, which if he's able to win will magnify any effect.
Then he can stand up the next day and call himself the comeback kid. The next debate will be interesting because I think it's the town hall format. And to me, this is where, like, the town hall formats are where Bill Clinton was at his best, right? Like, I feel your pain. We all remember, George Bush Sr. checking his watch in the background as Clinton's essentially embracing the American people. Hillary isn't Bill in those kind of personal connections, but can she learn enough from him to actually, be able to do that? Or can Trump, you always hear from people like Trump is incredibly charming one-on-one. Like people who sit down with him one-on-one just can't believe it's the same guy they see on TV. Can he translate that into these kind of town hall meetings and actually seem empathetic to what people are feeling, and then, cast all the blame on Hillary and the political elites for 30 years of getting them there? I don't know, though. He's just like, there's so much bombast, right? I'm not sure he can actually make that seemingly heart-to-heart connection.
I don't think either of them are good at that. Neither of them are relatable. Neither of them are, that empathetic candidate. I know what you're going through. I've been there. I mean, they're both.
Paige, you don't relate to someone who lives in a gold-plated penthouse in New York City, or to a former first lady who get paid, $400,000 for a speech. You don't relate to that?
Oh, it was so ironic to me when Hillary was going off about how Trump only got where he was because his father, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, who's Hillary Clinton to criticize somebody for only getting ahead because of connections, or perhaps because your husband was president? That might be a little bit of why you're in the chair that you're in. Anyway, I mean, to me, they're both unrelatable. But the strongest moment for Trump in the debate was when he said that, typical politician. So you mentioned that, Jordan. So, I mean, if he can channel that, I don't think the ones who like Trump, I don't think they like him because they relate to him. I think they like him because he's kind of anti-establishment. And he's, seems like he could probably handle the finances, maybe. So I think that if he can channel that whole typical politician thing, and also, there were so many missed opportunities for Trump. when they were talking about cybersecurity, didn't bring up the email stuff with Hillary. I mean, there were so many missed opportunities. If he can get those opportunities and stop taking the bait on all of the times when she's insulting him, then maybe he can do a little better and people will like him. But in the same vein, I think if Hillary can keep baiting him and he's going to keep taking the bait, then that's probably her most effective strategy.
Aaron, I know you've been analyzing platforms. Who do you think is better for Canada? I mean, you're reading Canadian media, Trump is essentially the devil, but, objectively, like, what do you think Clinton and President Clinton or President Trump would do for Canada?
Well, I think there's obviously a lot of unknowns on both sides. Trump's probably maybe a bit more of an unknown entity. The one thing for sure is Trump would be better for Canada's energy industry, which is obviously a key driver of Western Canadian economic growth, but also the national growth more broadly. So I think that's a big plus. The Keystone Pipeline, just kind of, again, encouraging oil and natural gas development. And pushing that instead of kind of trying to hide and not be proud of our energy development. So obviously that's a big one. And then issues around NAFTA are a little bit unclear about how those would work. I don't think it would be a big deal either way of how kind of the renegotiation of that trade treaty would go. And then there's some of the foreign affairs stuff, which is, kind of depends on what type of world you want to live in, type of thing. It's not critical we're kind of on an island over here, so it's not super critical to us. But the energy development would definitely be the first and foremost issue.
But fair to say that people there are major concerns about the trade aspect, trade with the U.S. People are concerned about Trump. I think there are many Canadians who are. Yeah,
well, I think that because he keeps talking about NAFTA. Every time he's talking about NAFTA, he's talking about trade in relation to U.S.-Mexican trade. So what that means for NAFTA and how that would affect Canada-U.S. trade, arguably Canada and the U.S. only have a quasi-free trade deal right now. So could a NAFTA be replaced by a true free trade between the U.S. and Canada? Possibly. So I think there's a lot of it, a little bit of an unknown, and that's why a lot of people, business people or investors, don't like risk or unknown. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be worse. It just means that it's harder to predict how things would play out. So I think that's where it is on the trade thing. But obviously, people in the energy industry would be excited about a Trump victory.
It would be nice if we could get some critical analysis from all these media talking heads on NAFTA's affecting Canada, right? We hear the U.S. stories about jobs going to Mexico. It's the same thing happened in Canada. No one ever talks about it, which sort of makes me wonder if it is. And no one wants to back up the Trump narrative in a Canadian media outlet. But it's the trade side. It is a real unknown. But boy, would Keystone ever help the Alberta oil sands? It'd be huge.
It'd be huge, yeah, huge. The Alberta oil sands.
So, predictions here. Anyone want to make a prediction? What's going to happen? The election's in 39 days. Is this all coming down to Colorado?
I got my updated electoral map here.
Okay. Oh, good.
You can see it there.
Excellent.
So I got this is a modified one from 538. More polls are coming out. You can see the dark red. So you got the totals up there. Mm-hmm. No one's at 270, which is there's actually, by the way, there's a realistic tie scenario that could happen here, which is a whole nother conversation. But anyways, that's what you got there. I got the 4 real toss-up battleground states: Nevada, Colorado, Florida, and North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So
you have New Hampshire as a toss-up as well,
and New Hampshire as well. I have New Hampshire there. There's been a kind of a lack of quality polling. You look at New Hampshire was one of the closest states last election. And then I'll bring you this one over here. This is probably the most important map of the election. This shows you the minority voters across a variety of different states. And you can see New Hampshire, they're right at the top. And you can see other states where Trump has made, Maine, I think Romney lost Maine by double digits. It's seen as almost within a couple points right now. Iowa, Romney lost by about 5 points. Trump's easily winning. So there's the states with the high percentage of non-college whites specifically is kind of where Trump's making up his ground. The old Reagan Democrats or blue collar blue collar whites, people from the Rust Belt who might have lost their jobs. So I'm keeping my eye on that. So that's why I got New Hampshire in there. And but I think so between those 5 states, I think they'll probably decide the election, unless there's a big swing through Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that type of a thing.
I feel so underprepared, Paige. He's got charts. He's got maps.
Yeah, like this is really solidified to me that like many news networks, the Tax Talk podcasts need a studio, but not only a studio, we need one of those interactive boards where we can have Aaron Gunn there sort of being like, let me bring up this, and that would be better. Like, I mean, he's already a pro. He already is analyzing the maps. So
we'll have to launch one of those Indiegogos or something to get that funded, a Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
I got one more chart for you. My favorite one. This is the winding path, the 270 electoral votes.
The snake.
From 538. So you can see there you basically got to cross the line. So right now, Trump is leading in the polling averages of he would need 3 more states, and the 3 closest ones would be Nevada, Florida, and Colorado. If he won those 3 states plus the ones he's already leading in, he would win the election. Obviously, there's different combinations, but that would be that is the closest. They're arranged in from reddest to darkest blue in the polling averages, from the most pro-Trump to the most pro-Clinton. That gives you an idea of how those work. That's from 538's website.
Florida, as they say. All right. Well, thanks, guys. It's time for our usual feature, the Waste of the Week. All right. So in the dog days of August, the British Columbia Institute of Technology got some media going when they debuted 2 new sleep pods in their Burnaby campus library. So these are like essentially beds with like a little bit of privacy, but not too much privacy, because university students, you can't have them have too much privacy. They're in the library, but this was to help these poor souls rest their weary bones. Now it looks so like BCIT though fibbed to reporters about the cost. They underreporting it by almost half. They claimed they would cost $2,200 each for a total of $4,400. I put in a Freedom of Information request to find out the actual invoice, and it turns out they cost $2,300 each, plus $1,150 in shipping and handling, for a total of $5,750. But it was in US dollars, so it actually cost more than $7,500 Canadian. So our $2,200 sleep pods actually cost almost $4,000 a piece, and that is our waste of the week. All right, well.
Wow.
That's it for this episode of Tax Talk from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Be sure to follow Paige on Twitter at Paige McP. Follow Aaron. Is it at Aaron Gunn? Easy.
Yeah.
Or me at Jordan Bateman. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please subscribe. Give us a good rating. Check out our website at taxpayer.com. No Tax Talk next week. It's Thanksgiving weekend, so we'll have turkey talk instead. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with another guest, and looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.